Before we start, let me say a quick prayer for myself, and then we'll proceed. Dear Father, we come before you and just humble ourselves. So grateful that we can call you our Father and that we know that we have an eternal life with you in heaven. And just pray that you focus our attention on that as we go through these uncertain times. Pray for those that are suffering around the world in war-torn Ukraine and places that we may not even know. We know your hand is in it all, that you're aware of what's going on, and that you have a plan that's going to guide us all to heaven. And we just trust you and pray that you guide us and keep us close. In Christ's name, amen. So my verse for today is Romans 12, verse 11 through 13. So I don't know if we have that up, but we'll. But anyway, it says, "Never let the fire in your heart go out. Keep it alive. Serve the Lord. When you hope, be joyful. When you suffer, be patient. When you pray, be faithful. Share with God's people who are in need. Welcome others in your homes." So now that we're coming out of this kind of a post-COVID period, I don't know if we're quite out of it. I don't know if our elected leaders have quite decided to let go of that power they have over us, but we seem to be kind of getting into some sense of normalcy now. I mean, but I don't know about you, but it still seems a little different to me. I mean, it seems that it's not quite like it was a couple of years ago. I don't hug people like I used to or shake hands as much as I do. You know, in business, you're always shaking hands when you're out in the field and stuff. You know, if nothing else, it's maybe a fist bump or something like that. You know, people are still a little bit tentative. You know, I attend more virtual meetings, Zoom calls. You know, what used to be sit around a big conference table and pull out plans and talk about stuff. It's different. It's all electronic now. And I read somewhere where some of the large gatherings, they're starting to schedule people's arrival and departure so they don't have clusters of people coming together at the same time, which seems kind of unusual. But there's, you know, remote work and remote learning seems to be more common. You know, I think we're just kind of getting, I mean, it's kind of being folded into our lifestyles a little at a time so that it's becoming more normal. I saw a guy driving down the street, and I don't want to judge, but he's got his windows rolled up, he's by himself, he's wearing a mask. And I mean, it's just, sometimes I see stuff like that, and it's like, just kind of catches me off guard. I mean, I was at the city meeting, and one of the staff members comes up to help me, and there's plexiglass between us. He's wearing a mask, and he's got gloves on. So, you know, a year and a half ago, that would be probably normal, but now it seems like some people aren't quite coming out of that. They're kind of holding on to those little things that make them feel secure or safe or whatever, but it's changing. You know, even our economy, you know, our government throws these massive amounts of money into our system, and it's supposed to help through the crisis that we're in, and you know, it may and it may not. I don't know, but it just seems like we're more guarded. Like the work I do, I used to go down to the county, make an appointment, meet with somebody, give them plans, they, you know, pay some fees. Now everything's through email. I don't even talk to a person. The city of San Diego, they give you a portal, give you a number, you establish your project, and then you input electronically all your documents. and all your applications, all of that. You never talk to anybody. 2 or 3 weeks later, they'll send you, if they need something else or if they need you to, pay a fee or whatever. And then you pay the fee and then goes away and then comes back maybe again. And eventually they come back and they issue your permit, and you may not even talk to another human being. It's getting, in some ways it's kind of nice because people kind of get into their little arenas and that becomes their kingdom or fiefdom or whatever, and they kind of control everything in that. But now it's kind of less personal, impersonal, so I'm sure there's good and bad to that. But anyway, it's just I'm getting kind of a different vibe, and I'm just trying to be mindful of it, just being aware, of what my life used to be like, so that I know that changes that are occurring, that I'm aware of them, and it just doesn't all hit me at once. Can't really put my finger on it, but it just seems like we're becoming a little less human. What was considered normal a few years ago is a little bit different now. So anyway, so that kind of brings us to where we're at. I mean, technology is kind of in our world these days. That's where we, that's what we're dealing with, is all of the changes that are going on, every aspect of our lives. I have my iPhone, which if I would have turned it on, I would have been timing myself so I knew not to go over, but now you're in trouble because I forgot to turn it on. So, but this is my connection to the world now. I mean, I keep my my life in that. I rely on it. Every once in a while, I'll leave the house without it, and I'll get like halfway to the office, and I panic. It's like, oh my gosh, I can't go an hour or 2 hours without having access to it, because that's how I keep in touch with my clients, my family, my friends. I keep all my schedules on it. I found out that my daughter Ray can track me. She knows where I'm at. I don't know what she did to my phone, but she can, in Washington, turn on her phone and tell you where I'm at. So I can't do that to her. She hasn't told me how that works, but it doesn't seem fair. I mean, their kids are taking advantage of us. So, but I get my emails, all of that, all my banking. I buy stuff online through the phone. I mean, this is like an extension of me. I watch TV, I listen to music, I have Spotify, I text, I have Facebook. So, I mean, and now I don't know how I would get by without it, because everybody that's got a phone, that's how I stay in touch with them. And I communicate and get all kinds of important information out to people, and it comes back to me, and we carry on business, and it's just becoming a more normal part of my life, and it's just becoming more integrated into what my life has become. Our homes, for example, are smarter. Our appliances are smarter. Our cars, I saw a commercial where the guy's driving down the highway passing a semi, and he's playing patty cake on, in this Ford truck, kind of clapping his hands, not steering the wheel. He's just not concerned about it at all. My car's a 2007. I don't have all that stuff yet, but I mean, it's coming. I mean, it's interactive. They try, these machines and stuff, they try to anticipate and try to be proactive and corrective, and I mean, in some ways it's amazing, and in some ways it's scary. I mean, people like Google, Amazon, Facebook, they collect this data, they use this data, they're sophisticated, they know how to make algorithms. I can't do an algorithm. I wouldn't know how. I mean, when I was in college, we were just starting out, and I took Fortran, and that's where you you have X's and O's and stuff. And we were writing, I had a little stack of cards that's like a half an inch thick, and I thought I was, a genius. And the really nerdy guys come in with stacks, of cards, and they feed them into these computers. And I guess that's a form of coding in the early stages. But you write programs, and there's people that's what they do. And I've done work. I did a project for a company that they teach kids how to code by playing games and stuff. But when they get through the program, they know how to write and code, and therefore make millions of dollars and that sort of thing. So these big tech companies, the point I was wanting to make is they're gathering all this information, and then they can influence people's opinions. They can influence masses. They know when to push a little, when to push a lot to get information across. They can control the information that we receive. So it's a very serious and important thing. Sometimes it gets a little frustrating, and you go, how do I don't want to lose control of my life. But it's like, what can we do? We can protest, we can find ourselves canceled or deplatformed, or, we can move to a cabin in the woods, like we were talking about, like Ted Kaczynski, he got off the grid, and, unfortunately he built bombs and anthrax and sent it out to people that he thought was destroying our world. But I don't know that we, that's going to be what's going to happen. But I think the thing is we need to learn to manage all of this technology as it impacts our lives, so that we don't let it destroy our lives, that we don't let us alienate us from God, to detach us from our spiritual world. And I heard somebody say, it's like fire, technology is. We don't need to be afraid of it. We just need to respect it. And we need to understand the changes that it's creating in us, so that we don't lose ourselves in that world. No matter what we do, this technology is going to continue on, man. Whatever happens, it's going to be different, the world that we live in right now. But I think, we prepare ourselves, and we keep our perspective, bless you, and we keep our perspective as the changes occur. So some coming attractions with this new technology. I don't know if you guys know this guy, and I apologize, I couldn't resist. This is John Cena. He's a big muscle guy doing movies in China, and he said something that got him in trouble with the Chinese, so they cut him off. And I saw a TV program where he's groveling, kind of these crocodile tears, apologizing to the Chinese people for offending them. So basically, this is a spoof on social credit systems. That's one of the things that, like, China's been dealing with this since the 1980s. It's where our businesses and our government have this surveillance system where they, give you a score, rank you based on your behavior, And based on that score, you may be able to buy plane tickets or travel or be restricted from traveling. So you definitely want to stay in the good graces. But it's a way for them to control their society. And they're getting pretty good at it, I understand. They have these cameras set up that they have facial recognition, and they can just kind of track the masses and know who's doing what. So given that, I think we can see, people are starting to explore that concept in our society. We're seeing bigger corporations, companies that are managing people based on what they, we'll call it a soft rollout of a social credit system, but, depending on your opinions and how much you exert them, they may decide that you're not, shouldn't have access to certain media types. I mean, they deplatform people for saying things that they deem not acceptable. And I think over the past few years, I think you can see things like mask mandates. You've heard about COVID passports. They kind of push these things out, and depending on the resistance they get, they kind of adjust their algorithm or whatever, or the way they present it, and it, then they eventually get the masses to kind of buy into it, and then everybody kind of conforms, and and life kind of takes, it kind of becomes more controlled, and so they're kind of doing this in kind of a slow boil format. They're kind of rolling it out a little at a time. It's kind of like, what's the term where you cooking a frog? You don't just throw them in a hot frying pan or boiling water, because they'll jump out. But if you put them in comfortable water, get them comfortable, and then you start turning the heat up a little bit, eventually it gets to a point where all of a sudden the water's so hot that it's too late. They can't, do anything about it. And I think we're seeing some of these tech companies and stuff doing that with our population. They're kind of doing a slow boil, turning up the heat a little bit. I mean, if you look at other Anglican countries like England and New Zealand, Australia, they're a lot further down the road than we are, but not quite. We still kind of have that American revolutionary kind of mentality, so there is still a little pushback, but I think they're getting us in line. The other thing, in addition to social credit scores, a new thing is Neuralink. I don't know if you've heard of this, but Elon Musk is scheduled this year to be starting to put microchips kind of at the base of people's skulls, and they can start doing, getting electronic information, impulses and stuff to your brain, so you can be more efficient, I guess, in the way that you operate in the world. And so you laugh, but it's coming. and it's it's basically a brain chip is what it is. But I mean, it's things that people are experimenting with, and they kind of creating this cyborg. That's another term where, you get these mechanical devices that are implanted in you that the idea is a person gets physical attributes and extended beyond the normal human limitations. So, that's kind of where our technology is pushing us now. Is they're wanting to integrate the human between, what we are as a natural human in the world, and it's creating what they call a cyborg. I mean, even the iPhone. I mean, it makes me a bit of a cyborg, because my iPhone and I are one. You've heard of people that drive cars and the car becomes an extension of them. That's kind of what the iPhone is, and the computer. It's an extension of us, and so we're out operating in the world, in the digital world, with our devices, and we are to some extent becoming somewhat cyborg-like in the way that we're doing. So that kind of transitions us into this transhumanism. That's kind of where we've kind of accordingly we're evolving, and we're getting to this point where we're the human race. We're thinking that the human race can evolve beyond where we are naturally, that we can enhance ourselves with mechanical devices, we can enhance our mental limitations using science and technology. For example, Facebook has what they call Meta, which is they changed their name from Facebook to Meta, and they're creating this metaverse that it's a 3D universe where you put on this device on your head and you can create a whole 3D world. And they're selling these platforms, and companies are buying them. And I mean, it's like real estate. You want to get your domain and control it, and control everything that happens within that domain. And I know it sounds kind of crazy, but we're not that far. I mean, people are starting to operate within those systems. They say our future is going to be managed by technology. The human beings, the masses, are going to be managed, so that whoever controls technology is going to control us. There's experts that say there's what they call a digital civil war out there right now, that there's a battle to see who controls technology, which group has a better technology, who can overcome these things. And it may be the United States, it may be Russia, it may be China, it may be somebody else that ultimately gets the superior perceptual position, I guess we'd call it, with their technological advances, so that they control everybody else that doesn't have that. So as we watch this era play out, there's not much we can do about it. Some of it's beyond our reach. It's already in the works. But I think we need to understand that these powers, there's things like the federal government, for example, big tech, there's shadow governments, intelligence agencies, DOJ, the media. All these people are trying to get into these power situations where they're part of the inner circle of this technological upheaval that we're in. And large corporations, for example, they have things that they want to, outcomes they want to see, and so they may or may not loan money to you depending on your maybe social credit score, whatever that is. So with this digital civil war going on, these are just some of the players, and we don't know who's going to prevail. It could be, yeah, the beginning of the mark of the beast. I don't think that's that big of a jump. John 19:11, Jesus says, "You have no power over me if it were not given to you from above." Just as a reminder, Jesus, when he was walking on this earth, it was ruled by the Romans. And I think, we need to remind ourselves that he was able to accomplish what God set out for him to do while he was here. And the same with the Jews. When they were being suppressed by the Egyptians, God's hand came in and guided his people through these difficult situations. And Jesus wasn't concerned about the fact that the Romans controlled every aspect of the Jewish life, or that the Jews weren't, the Jews being managed by the Egyptians. They trusted God. God guided them out of these situations and through them to accomplish what he wanted to do. So I would argue we could find ourselves in a similar position. We could be where we're, suppressed, managed by, we don't know if it's going to be Democrats, Republicans, federal government, Russia, China. We don't know who's going to be in power. God's the only one that knows this. But we do know that God has a plan, and that each one of us is part of this plan. And our job is to keep the faith through this circumstances that we find ourselves. So you and I might not agree on the outcome that we think should occur for our lives, But if you say, look at Romans 8:28, it says, and we know that in all things God works for for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. So, so that brings me to the point I want to make, that each one of us has a life force in us. God has given us a soul, a spirit, our human, whatever we call ourselves, beings. This is not man-made, and it's not given to us by man. This is given to us by God. And as Christians, God is going to work through us in this time, in this world. Sometimes we find ourselves oppressed by other forces, like the Jews, and things look bleak. But in the fast-paced world that we live in, we may feel overwhelmed, starting to fade, maybe like our light is going out, like our embers. Our souls may seem like they're starting to falter. So basically, my point is we need to protect this part of our lives in this age of technology and fast-moving changes in our lives. We need to stoke these embers. I mean, if I wanted to stoke a fire that was going out like this one appears to be, I might take some dry grass and put on it, maybe, blow on it. There might be some straw, maybe some twigs that I find, then maybe branches, and eventually throw a log on it and get the fire going. As Christians, stoking the fire in our hearts, it's like the grass might be reading a verse in the morning, or saying a prayer. Prayer is what sustains the fire, can be what sustains the fire, makes it burn. Prayer is an oxygen that keeps the fire of God in our spirit. Straw could be starting a daily reading program, studying the Bible. Twigs might be reaching out to help somebody in need. Branches might be joining or starting a Bible study. A log could be teaching a Bible class, or volunteering for a good cause. Each one of us has things that we can do to keep the fire alive, and that allows God to work through us to accomplish his will in this time that we live now. When we come together like this, each one of us brings our own little amber or fire, and as these fires combine, our fire gets bigger. As we come together, we're fulfilling the Bible's commandment not to forsake the assembly. Plus, we're encouraging each other. We're, during these times of uncertainty, our fires are being kindled by our presence here today. And when God is with our embers, he can create a bonfire in our community. So with all the unrest and uncertainty, all the challenges and changes that are going on around us, what we really need to do is find a quiet place and focus on our little embers, and to nurture it, and to love it, and to cherish it like God does. We need to live in this world, not the one we want to live in or wish we live in. And then we need to adjust and make changes as God gives us the ability that are coming our way. But don't let your flame go out. Do the things that stoke the fire, the life force inside you. Philippians 2:12-13 says, "Therefore, my dear friends, as you have always obeyed, not only in my presence, but now much more in my absence, continue to work out your salvation with fear and trembling, for it is God who works in you to will and to act in order to fulfill his good purpose. So our homework for this week is to find ways to stoke the amber in our lives and to look for good works to do with the technology and the changing world that we're in. We don't have to be defeated by this. We don't have to roll over and just let government or whatever take over. We need to live our lives with the freedom that God gives us and let others know that there's hope, that there's a meaning in life other than technology, which is becoming the God for many people. But let's let our lights shine, let our fires burn, and let's encourage each other as we go forward.